What I'm going to do is I'm going to try and do a 17 to 22 minute Photoshop tutorial here live. So I'm going to start the clock in just a second, and then I'm going to dive in, and we'll just see where the heck this crazy thing goes. And, maybe we'll end up doing this again with other things. So I'm starting the clock now. Okay, so welcome to the official beginning of my Photoshop live tutorial. I've never done anything quite like this before, so appreciate you tuning in and bearing with me as I figure this all out. I created a poll on the group Small YouTubers Boost 2 hours ago because I had this idea and I got the ducks in a row and I'm like, we're going to do this thing. But I wanted to find out what people wanted to learn about. And so I put up some options there. I could have taught you about Photoshop, TubeBuddy, optimizing old videos, Adobe Premiere Pro editing, managing a large Facebook group. I also allowed people to add their own options. Oh, and I added viral stat as well. Nobody added their own options, which was kind of surprising. But Photoshop tutorial creation, Photoshop thumbnail tutorial was the runaway hit. So that's what we're going to go with. We're going to go with Photoshop. And it's actually kind of funny. I put this little image together in like less than 5 minutes, but it's kind of meta, right? Because it's like it's a screenshot of Photoshop inside of Photoshop that I made a thumbnail of for this live stream, which actually didn't update for some reason. And then and now here it is in Photoshop. So it's like the turducken of Photoshop, or it's like super meta Photoshop. Anyways, we're here to talk about thumbnails and using Photoshop in particular to make hopefully better thumbnails. Why is this important? Because we, as small YouTubers, we all need views. Views are what really, it begins everything. Views get you the watch time. Views get you the subscribers. Views get you the likes and the comments and all of that kind of stuff. So everything really begins with the views. How do you get the views? Well, an important part of that, as many of you already know, is having a compelling thumbnail. So the more well-equipped we are to use various software to create thumbnails, or to have a service like Talency do it for us, whatever works, if the thumbnails look better, more people will click, you get more views, and then everything else starts to grow. Everything else starts to boost, if you will. So that's where we're going to begin with, is trying to make the best thumbnails that we can and showing you how to do that in Photoshop. And so, when it's a better thumbnail, and better is subjective, it's not an objective thing, but when it's better, your metric CTR, click-through rate, should go up. That's how you can know if your new thumbnail is better than your old thumbnail. And one of the ways that you can test that out, actually, the paid version of TubeBuddy, link in the description, video is not sponsored, allows you to do something called A/B testing, which I myself haven't done yet, but it allows you to test two thumbnails alternating and then see which one gets a better click-through rate. So that's important. And also, just having a high-resolution thumbnail uploaded to your video gives you a little tick in the algorithm, and that gives your video an advantage, and search discovery recommended as well. So all of that is important. So what I'm going to be doing here is I'm sharing my full screen, not just a browser window like I normally do, so I'll try not to have anything inappropriate pop up. And I've got chat here. Let me just close that thing there. Let's see here. What are we photoshopping? We're going to make a thumbnail. Does the algorithm read the text in the thumbnail? Or is this something I invented? I don't think it applies OCR, but oh man, I mean, probably one day. I'm sure the technology will get there, but I don't think they currently do that. But one theory that I've been testing is they might read the metadata of the image. So I actually go into the properties of the JPEG that I produce, and I put in a title, a subtitle, comments, and tags, as well as add myself as authorship, because maybe it's reading that. I don't know if it is or not, but it takes like 90 seconds, so why not give it a shot? Maybe it gives you an advantage over somebody else. So lots of good reasons there. So yeah, and I just figured that this is good because we can do like show and tell. Instead of normally during my live streams, I just talk about Photoshop. I don't actually dive into it. So today I'm going to do both. And this might also be useful for you to rewatch in the future. When I find a really good tutorial, sometimes I will rewatch it as I'm doing the thing, maybe even several times, to build my competence. And that's actually partly how I got comfortable with Photoshop for tutorials. So actually, you know what I think I would like to do is maybe I can show you a before and after of some thumbnails that I've made, because I've had some pretty bad ones and I've had some better ones. like here, that's a bad one. No, I wanted this one here. So this is an old thumbnail from my first ever video on YouTube, the second ever video that I made. Went to a place called Hell's Gate. Let me just quickly check that you can see that. Yeah, good. So that is that, and then I made a better version here with Photoshop. Not much better because I still start with the same image, but that's kind of a before and after, so you can see some of the difference that you might be able to get out of it. So there you go. And in terms of my own sort of background as a as sort of having a tiny bit of expertise. I don't call myself an expert by any means, but I have been using Photoshop for over a decade, and I've recently been having some success with thumbnails. So hopefully that's a place where we can all begin and kind of grow together. So hopefully that makes sense. That's sort of, oh, actually I can close that. I was just sharing that in the group. So we've got that preamble out of the way. Now let's go make an actual thumbnail. So I have, let me find it here. I have a video that I have already edited and rendered, and I plan on having it come out. It's a podcast clip. I plan on having it come out this weekend. And so I need to design a thumbnail for it, and I've been kind of putting it off. So here it is. It's Travel Common Sense. I've got the sound off on my speakers here, so there's no sound. So here's me just, yammering away about something. So one of the simple places that you can begin... Whoa, that was weird. Oh, that's because I just had an edit point. There you go. That's kind of a funny face, isn't it? Let's work with that. Why not? This is all just for fun. I might not end up using this thumbnail. I might. But a lot of people say, like, oh, I don't have a good picture to use. And so one of the things that's important about thumbnails is it needs to be an accurate representation of the video that it is for. So using a screen grab from that video, not a bad idea as a starting place. So I didn't have any good stills. If you have a nice like DSLR still image that you can use, that's obviously a better place to start from. But I'll just make do with this screen grab where I look, I don't know, kind of squinty-eyed, piratey something. So one of the things that you can do is have your video go full screen and then hit print screen, and then it copies that whole image onto your clipboard. And I'm going to get out of that, and I can even close that down. It's saved onto my clipboard, and I'm going to go into Photoshop. The Photoshop I'm using is version CS6, which was the last version of Photoshop that you could buy without a subscription model. I've just ordered a new computer for myself. This one's starting to run slow. I need a new editing computer. With the new computer, I'm thinking of getting the subscription to the latest Photoshop. But this is what I got for now. And it's very similar to other versions of Photoshop, so hopefully a lot of this stuff is compatible. I'm just going to click File, New to create a new file. And it's important to note the width and the height of your thumbnail. You want to have a high-resolution thumbnail. Now, that can mean 720p, but what I would recommend is going all the way up to 1080 every time. It'll scale better, look better at multiple resolutions, and this is a bit of a theory, but the algorithm seems to respect, higher resolution stuff. So I think having a 1080 by 1920 full HD thumbnail is helpful in the algo as well as its visual presentation. And that also happens to be the resolution my desktop works at, which is nice. So that's 1920 pixels going across and 1080 pixels tall. I'm going to click OK. I'm not too concerned about the background because I'm going to be using this image as my background. So there we go. I've got my new file here, and then I'm just going to paste what I copied onto my clipboard using the print screen function. So I'm going to go Edit, Paste. You could also press Control V to do that. And so there's me with my funny face. There's a few different things you could do. For example, if we wanted to, we could create a border. So let's do that. In the bottom right-hand corner here, I've got this tool up that is Layers. And you'll notice that there's this icon, second one from the right. You click on that, and it creates a new layer. So I'm going to do that. And then I can just... Okay, on the left, I've got these tools here. Around the bottom of the first segment of tools, I think it's like the fifth one down, is the eyedropper tool. This is useful in case you want to capture a color in the image and then use that color for other things. This can really help with like color matching for various things. And so I'm going to go and I'm going to grab the red out of my little logo here from the back. Well, that came out as a little pink. Let's see if I can get a redder sample here. Oh, it's getting pinker. I don't know why it's so pink. Maybe I get it from the YouTube logo. Come on, give me some good red. Okay, that's good enough. You can also click in it and then you can adjust it. So I'm just going to pull it in, make it a little bit more red. What did I do there? I clicked the color that was selected, and then I just played with the color picker. So there we go. So I've got this layer on top of everything, and then I'm going to see if I remember how to do this. I haven't made a border in a while. I click fill, and then how do you do that? There's actually a couple of different ways we can make a border, but play around. So what we're actually doing here is we're creating a bit of a color wash. This isn't a border, this is a color wash. But that's a trick to do a color wash if you want to. If you want to kind of change the tinge of things, you could do something like that. But I'm going to put it sort of back there. There's a few different ways that we can create a border, and you know what, at the moment, trying to remember the trick for having a border of a specific width. We can come back to that. Anyways, if you want to do a color wash, that's how you can do a color wash. But we'll put that aside for now. And one of the things you're probably going to want to consider doing is tweaking the color of your image. One of the things that I've noticed with thumbnails is when you've got your nice big full HD image, it can look really rich and vibrant. But once you compress it down, and it's not something you do, it's something that YouTube does, it displays the thumbnail on mobile, on desktop, at different resolutions, on TV, gaming platform, whatever, I find that it loses a lot of saturation. The colors looked a little washed out. The green doesn't look as green as it was. So one thing I do recommend to account for that is to maybe push your saturation and your vibrance up a little bit more than necessary. So I click on image, and then adjustments, and then vibrance. And this gives you two controls, vibrance and saturation. What I like to do as a starting place is I kick both of them up by 25. And I watch as the image changes as I do this. 25 there, 25 there. Now you notice when the saturation went up, I became pasty orange. So saturation is not a good idea to increase here. So I'm going to set that back to 0. And instead, I'm going to go up, I'm going to kick the vibrance up to 50. And then I can use this preview button here to toggle between the two to see, like, okay, you'll notice that it makes the red pop a little bit more. But I think that might be a little unnatural, so I'm gonna leave that just at 25. It doesn't totally change my skin color a whole lot, but it does make the red in the background pop a little bit more. Maybe I'll go up to like 35. Something like that. And there's all sorts of adjustments you can make, brightness, contrast, etc. But that's sort of what that is there. Now, this video, you may recall, is about travel common sense. So, how's everybody doing in chat? Things are good. Cool. So, I'm going to want some text. Now, there's some important things to consider when entering text on a thumbnail. You want your text to be legible at multiple resolutions. So if it's like a brush script font that's very thin and like calligraphy, very artistic, that can look lovely at a high resolution, but when you shrink it down, it's hard to read. So the font that I recommend going with, I'm just going to click the T on the left here, which is my font tool, and you'll notice in the upper left-hand corner, there is an ability to pick what font you want to use. So there's a couple fonts that are very popular with YouTubers with a very good reason behind it. And it's called Bebas, B-E-B-A-S. And there's a variant called Bebas New, where new is spelled N-E-U-E. These are free fonts. You can Google them and find them and install them. They won't cost you anything. But they're block type fonts, so they're easy to read, and they scale very well at multiple resolutions. They don't come off looking weird. So you'll notice that there's a lot of like really popular vloggers and things like that that use this font. When you start to use it, when you see it, you're gonna be like, you know what, I've seen that font all over YouTube, and there's a reason. It works well. So I'm going to go ahead and select Bebas New because that's what I've been working in lately. And I'm going to change the color. I'm going to go with some white text. And I'm going to type in travel common sense. And I'm just going to grab and move that text. So like I could put it right there if I wanted to. I could change the color. There's also the option on the right to change the color. I could go with like a black. And what would be good about that choice is it is a high contrast against the background that it's against right now. So that would be a good thing. But I'm going to go white. White on white doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but watch what I do. I'm going to make the font a little bigger. And you know what? Maybe I'll add a question mark on the end. Kind of give people make people wonder like, what's he talking about? Here's a nice little trick. When you have an object, any layer selected, and you press Control A on your keyboard, it will select that and the whole image. Why would you want to do this? Because then there are these buttons at the top that appear that allow you to align it. And I went searching for years for this function. I only found it a couple years ago, and I love it so much since I found it. So you can see here from those icons, I'm going to align this to the center in sort of a left-right way. There we go. Now it's in the center. But that text is still going to be hard to read, right? It's got, you know, a nice block font. It's a decent size, but the contrast is no good. But for whatever reason, I'm committed to having white text, let's say. How can I make my white text pop against a white background? In the layer panel on the bottom right-hand side, you right-click, and there's something called blending options. And there's a lot of different options here. I'm a particular fan of something called the drop shadow. So you see I clicked that, and it updates instantly. And again, there's a preview toggle here, so you can go back and forth to kind of camera 1, camera 2, see how it looks. And so, okay, it pops a little bit more, but I still don't like that look. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set the distance to 0, but then I'm going to increase the spread and the size. And you see what happens? It's almost like there's a dark glow behind it. And now the text pops against the background, but the text itself stays pretty crisp. So I'm just going to play around with this a little bit. Maybe I want it a little bit more subtle, maybe a little less subtle, I don't know. You can go like that. There we go. So this would be an okay thumbnail, but I've got some blank space. So on the right-hand side here, I've got this empty space. But I have some assets that I can put in there. So for example, I'm going to go down to find my logos. And I am going to open my logo. I'm going to press Control A, which is a nice shortcut to select everything. It works in all sorts of things. You know, Audacity, your web browser, whatever. Control A, I've now selected the whole image. Nice. Edit, copy, merged. It copies all of this as a merged item with a semi-transparent background. Then I'm going to go over to my thumbnail that I've been working on, and I'm going to paste it. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click on this layer and convert it to a smart object. This helps Photoshop maintain the quality of the image even as you mess with it, basically. That's the short explanation. I'm then going to click on it, because this is too big. This is blocking out the whole thing. I'm then going to click on that, one of the dimensions, and then between the width and the height thing here, there is a little sort of, it says maintain aspect ratio. I'm going to click that, so that even if I make it smaller or shorter or whatever, it won't skew it. It will keep the ratio of the X and Y axis equal to each other. So I'm going to shrink this down. And then I'm going to place it over here in this giant blank space so that the image is a little bit more dynamic, a little bit more interesting. I'm going to intentionally have it cross over where the ceiling is, just so that that looks a little bit dynamic, and I'm going to place the file. There we go. But what if I want to add a little bit more? I do have some other assets that I have. I made myself some arrows that I can use. And so I'm going to open these arrows in Photoshop as well. And I'm going to Control A to select all. And then I'm going to copy. There's only one component to it, so I don't need to do anything fancy. And then I can just paste in my arrow. I can put it anywhere, make it point at the logo, make it point at my shoulder for no good reason. you know, I could skew it. Like here you see, I didn't choose locking the aspect ratio, so that kind of skews it a little weird. And so I'm gonna place that just so I can undo it. Step backwards. But actually, I'm gonna delete that and go back to my source image. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna flip it. Image rotation, and then I'm gonna flip it horizontally. So it's now pointing in the other direction. Then select everything, copy it again. Then I'll paste it in. Now I can have it pointing at whatever. I can have it pointing over here. And just something to draw the eye to a particular location. So we're at the 20-minute mark. So that's 20 minutes with a lot of explanation as well. And I've, you know, shown you how to do some pretty basic things here. I've recommended a text that works very well for thumbnails. I've shown you how you can put the text in, manipulate it a little bit. Remember, using that drop shadow is a way to make text pop, even if it's against a similar background. But keeping contrast in mind, I've been able to bring in semi-transparent assets, move them around without losing fidelity of the image, and bring in other things that might draw the eye. And I've also tweaked my base image by adjusting the vibrance. And if I wanted to, again, I could put in a color wash to the whole thing if for some reason I wanted to do that. Maybe I wanted to look like I was really angry. And just keeping in mind where your layers are. So if I put the color wash above the text, it will also wash the text. But if I move it down, the text would still pop, and now I'm red in the face for some reason. I don't know. I'm probably not going to do that. So that's a basic, quick little tutorial there to show you how to do some basic stuff. So I guess my next thing is do you have any questions or anything specific that you would like to see? I'd be happy to show you. Just keeping an eye on chat now. But that was a real quick little tutorial on how you can make your own thumbnail in Photoshop. Now, not everyone can afford Photoshop, and I completely respect and appreciate that. There are some alternatives out there. For example, if you have TubeBuddy, and again, there's an affiliate link down below, video not sponsored, but if you have TubeBuddy, it has its own thumbnail tool that will allow you to do some of what we've done here. It'll allow you to put in the text and bring in semi-transparent assets to a still image from your video. You can do it right in your web browser if you've got the browser plugin. So that's a pretty nice option. Alternatively, if you just don't have the time, there's a service called TalentZ, and I think it's for $7.99 a month. You get unlimited graphics work. So you can send them that image, that screenshot, and just tell them a little bit about the video. They'll create it for you and send it to you. So you know, if you don't have the time to muck around with all this Photoshop, that's another alternative. So there you go. I guess how to lay out the thumbnail. Yeah, so in terms of laying out a thumbnail, you don't want something covering up a focus point. And if there's a lot of blank space, you can put something in there to keep the image interesting, or you could go for a minimalist design aesthetic and just lose it all together, make it go away. Maybe that is better because then the eye will be drawn to the arrow and to the text and things like that. So how you do it, it really is an art form, and that's where TubeBuddy's A/B testing can be helpful too, so you can kind of determine what approach works better. But yeah, this is sort of how it is. And one thing that I do highly recommend, especially if you're using Photoshop, save the Photoshop file. What if there's a typo? Then you can just come in and change the text. You don't have to start from scratch. Or what if you have an idea about how to make it look better? Or what if you update your logo one day and you want to go back and update all those old thumbnails? So I recommend keeping the source file. You know, that way you're not always just dealing with the rendered JPEG. You can actually go in and make quick little edits with all the different layers that you had originally created. So I guess my question for those of you in chat, do you think should I use this thumbnail, or do you think I should make something else for my actual video? This one is going to be coming out sometime this weekend. What do you think of this thumbnail? Cutting yourself out of the image and putting it on in another background, or blurring the background. That will be for another day, I think. Yeah, that's a trickier thing. I'm still learning that one myself. So one thing I will do here is I'm just going to call up a thumbnail that I've made for, let's say, one of my tip videos, just so you can see some of the stuff that goes into that. Let's try this one. Here we go. So for example, multiple layers, one of the tricks to make your text pop is you could put a rectangle behind it as well. That's another alternative to the drop shadow. But you see here, there's a lot of different layers going on here. Yeah, there's a color wash and just a bunch of stuff. So anyways, thanks so much for watching. I would change it looks too dark. I appreciate, oh, one side. Yeah, I agree. That's something I'm not super fond of with that shot myself. I was filming in a hotel room, so it's kind of limited in what I could do. I didn't bring lighting with me. So anyways, thanks so much for tuning in. I hope this was helpful. This will be available probably within like 20 minutes of this live stream ending. So if you want to go back and rewatch any part of it so you can see exactly where I clicked to do a particular thing, go right ahead. But yeah, thanks so much for watching. Do please give this a like if you found it useful. That helps other people discover the video. And if you're not already subscribed, please do so. We go live without a whole lot of warning. I gave at most 2 hours warning today. So if you want to catch us when we're live, sometimes we do channel reviews, so you might be able to get your channel reviewed. We do live tutorials like this, Q&A sessions, all sorts of things. So make sure you're subscribed with notifications on so you can catch us the next time we're live. And I will see you next time. Thanks so much for watching. This has been fun.